So we've been talked about the implications of going hybrid on all fronts, and we've touched upon the ISO 20022 standard. Let's now add another important pieces to the storyboard that we're crafting together. So let's now hand it over to Stefania Chaplin, solution architect from UK&I from GitLab, who will provide us with some structured understanding around how DevOps practices may be beneficial in raising the security bar of any financial service organization. So please remember to post any questions that you might have on the chat function. We will make sure to address those questions either online or offline. So I will hand it over to you now, Stefania.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction. And thank you everyone for joining. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are coming from. So for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to talk to you about securing DevOps, shifting left with security for financial services. I work at GitLab. You can come find us at our digital booth, and I'll give a little bit of information about that at the end because we have some cool swag on offer. So, managing vulnerabilities, everybody's favorite job, right? So I'm going to present to you two examples or two different approaches to security. So what happens when you find 10,000 vulnerabilities at the end of the software development lifecycle? You will probably end up a little bit like this person, totally overloaded, overworked, needing help. And what happens is that, employees are going to have a bad experience. You're going to end up with, levels of deployment pain because you can't put it to production if there's problems, right? You're going to end up with increased risk in the system, and it's not an ideal state to be. So I'm going to present an alternate way. What if you empower each developer to deal with each vulnerability at the point where it is introduced? So with this, you empower the developers. You give them access to security scans. You give them security education to understand what they're solving. And then each developer can fix their problem rather than having 10,000 problems right at the end. So I'm going to present to you an old school kind of approach, which may be familiar with some of you. So from the top left, you have your repository. You commit code to CI, merge to do continuous deployment, deploy. Then you have some reporting. Then comes the security team. Do not pass go. Do not collect £200. Stop here until you get the results back. They then dismiss or create issues, goes in the ticketing system, back to the dev team. And this loop could take days, weeks, months, and the poor development team have a lot of context switching because all of a sudden they're like, oh, I have to fix this. I can't even remember what it was. And we don't like context switching. So what about a different approach? What you can see here, so one of the key differences as part of CI, so I've got my repository, we've done a code commit. Within CI, we have security testing within the pipeline report. So a developer can create or dismiss their own issue. And then once they're happy, they can then merge requests so they can join their branch to the mainstream. And then the security team will get more of a dashboard overview. And then they'll get more either significant vulnerabilities and they'll get a lot less of the stuff that is easy to fix. One thing that is worth mentioning is types of security. So you can ask this of your teams. Also ask it of your suppliers. And also if you are using, other third-party tools. When we talk about security, a lot of people think, oh yeah, I'm looking at my static code, SAST. Or, oh, I'm looking at my dependency scanning. I've got an SBOM, software bill of materials, tick. But actually, there's a lot of different types of, security. Are you looking at your containers? Are you looking if you're leaking API secrets or keys? Are you doing API fuzzing? So there's a lot of different types. So when you do take an approach to security, make sure that you're being thorough and then you're looking at the different attack vectors and also, giving us information to further downstream because I'm sure we all have to provide these security questionnaires to our onboarders when we onboard suppliers. So just, having a tick box to make sure they are doing all this scanning is, really important so you don't miss any gaps. Another thing worth mentioning is compliance. Compliance is necessary. Compliance, make sure that we've got, controls in place. So there's a couple of things we want to bear in mind. So We want to have policies. We need to define and manage our controls. And that might be to do with regulation. Maybe we have internal rules. Once we have those, we want to do some reporting, and we want to be able to have export a report that is easily compilable. Do like a little export button or a right click. You don't want to be manually collating data around software development, because when we're doing 1, 10, 100, 1,000 deployments a day or a month or however many it may be, you don't want the process to be manual. You want it to be as easy, automated, and as exportable as possible. And finally, you need traceability. So how are you your audit events? How are you logging? And then this links back to the compliance rules that you've set in the first place. So it's really good to have an approach to be able to define the policies, manage them, and also generate the reports for compliance. So where do we get to when we've achieved this? So desired outcomes, efficiencies. I know that was mentioned in the keynote earlier. We want greater efficiencies for both security and development. We want happy people. We want developers that can get on with their job and create features and develop. We want security to not have a flashing red dashboard every other day and etc. Compliance, I've kind of mentioned, for regulation, especially within the finance industry, there's a lot of regulation. So we need the compliance to policy. Reduced security exposure, and I should have put this, and risk, because we know if we fix everything as we find it, there will be less things downstream. A good analogy I've heard is if you think about a river and a dam, so the tributaries, if you have polluted rivers, you're going to have a polluted waterway at the end. But if you clean up your rivers, your dam, your water at the end is going to be, a lot nicer. So this is kind of the approach we can take to security. If we tidy up our branches, let our developers empower them with security, we're going to have less exposure. And the final one, predictable cost. There are tools out there that will will charge per scan. Personally, I think that's that's very dangerous, because actually you want to be scanning more than less. You want to do a scan at each commit. So if a developer introduces a bad version of log4j, it's like, oops, and then they quickly fix and iterate within their branch, rather than they create a bad version of log4j and you don't realize till it's been in production for 2 months and you've been hacked. So it's really good to have, predictable, behavior and all of these other outcomes I've mentioned. So I'm going to talk a little bit wider, a little bit about the business impact. And there are some awesome books. If you haven't read them already, I would really recommend. Phoenix Project and then the sequel, The Unicorn Project, are a fictional tale of working in enterprise IT. Everything goes wrong, managing the different stakeholders. I won't ruin it too much. I read The Unicorn Project, and a woman moves to a team, and it takes her almost a third of the book to do a build, because between chasing tickets and finding the right scripts and all this, just to do a simple build. So it's kind of, everything that can go wrong. And a lot of organizations I speak to or even listen to see themselves a bit in this book. And then the middle one, Accelerate. You may have heard of the DORA metrics. They come from the book Accelerate, which was a scientific approach to DevOps. And they looked at what makes elite performers elite. So what makes people good? And first, improved information flow. This might be data information. This might be, personal, like interpersonal relationships in terms of information about what needs to be done. This can be, general, just, improved information flow. And this leads to a lot of positives. So culture is a real one. We work with tech, we work in IT, but we are people. So for example, if you have a developer that can actually create code, run code, create a feature, and then see that in production. Or if you can have a developer who to create code and then to push it, they need 40 different approvals, and then 3 months to deploy. You're going to end up with less job satisfaction. If you are able to deploy, easier and better, you're going to have reduced burnout, lower levels of deployment pain. And my first slide about the guy with the help, that I would say that was deployment pain, and also less unplanned work. So it's really important that we try and minimize unplanned work, because unplanned work is stressful. We want to focus on strategic planned work. And so finally, software delivery performance. If you, we are all software companies at the bottom. We rely a lot on software. So if you can improve your software delivery, you can improve your organizational performance. You can innovate. You can, innovate. You can gain market share. You can be pretty awesome. So don't take my word for it. A couple of success stories. So Goldman Sachs, you may have heard of them. So using GitLab, they gave us, the managing director gave us a lovely quote. And for example, I quite like the last sentence. We now see some teams running and merging 1,000 plus CI feature branch builds a day. So this is really empowering developer. Imagine if every developer at the end of the day could just do a little, they commit and then they see what, the security changes and they can improve things there. Then UBS, they're a very big user of us and they kind of summed it up: velocity, efficiency, and security. So these are really things that we can help. We can help you be more efficient with less security and compliance risk and deliver better software faster. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I know this was quite a, it is a 10-minute lightning talk. My contact details, if you want to reach out to me, I am, I'm a solutions architect. I'm based in London. That's my GitLab handle. You can also find me on Twitter. I've got a website as well, or just my email. And also we do have a GitLab virtual booth. If you come over, answer a few questions, you can get some limited edition GitLab swag socks. So thank you everyone for joining. A little bit of information about GitLab here. And yeah, thank you for joining and listening, and look forward to seeing you at the stand.
Thank you, Stefania Chaplin from GitLab. I think you've really been able to touch upon so many technical issues with such a great majesty. So congrats for that, for those of us that are not as technical as you are, of course. And also during our conversation, you touched upon the beneficial role that efficiency comes to play in delivering better customer experiences, employee experiences, and business outcomes overall. Thank you for that, because this gives me the nicest transition to the next speaker that we have here